The judge came to our neighbourhood on a restless Saturday, following the crisp breeze of April. Throughout most of my life, I haven't really given much thought to the idea of vigilante justice. To me, that stuff belonged in movies and cheap TV shows, not down at the park on 4th and Western. But things changed when all our neighbourhood residents were informed that a registered paedophile had just moved in down the road. A quick Google search that afternoon revealed that this man, a Mel Anderson, had been convicted of repeatedly molesting his 6-year-old niece, along with several of her young friends. So there you have it. Mel Anderson, certified piece of shit, had just moved in a few streets down. Now, nobody is happy in a situation like this, but it's just the way the world works. You can't get rid of the scum of the earth no matter how hard you try. At least that was my belief, until the morning of April 7th, 2015. That morning, a group of joggers found a moaning, twitching Mel stewing in his own syrupy blood. This seemed to be an instance of punishment fitting the crime. His hands were cut off, hands that presumably once touched underage children. His eyes were cut out so they could never view child porn again. And just for good measure, his penis had been hacked off, for reasons that should be obvious. This is how the judge introduced himself to the town. The judge is the name the papers would eventually give him, or her. Although the papers mourned the gruesome sight being displayed right next to the community park's playground, where no doubt Mel had been lurking the night before, they weren't overly concerned with the paedophile having his livelihood cut short, quite literally. Of course, there were those who demanded answers, but most people were quite content to just let the matter slide. As far as they were concerned, the judge was just taking out the trash. The judge visited again just 2 weeks later. April 28th, the back alley of Silver Fox Bar. Veronica Jeffers, aged 28, had her tongue sliced out for falsely accusing a man of raping her. She'd been hoping to swindle money out of the deal, but she hadn't thought through a lie very well. Unfortunately, the man was set free. Unfortunately, Veronica was never prosecuted. Veronica's fate was somewhat more merciful than Mel's. Before anyone found her, she had already drowned in her own blood. The stiffness was already setting in her muscles by the time the ambulance arrived. The media made the connection right away, and thus the judge was named and tagged. He'd scour our neighbourhood streets for filth and scum, keeping our little community safe and sound. He was obviously a very controversial figure. Some hailed him for his bravery, some hoped he'd meet the same fate as his victims. But everybody was interested in him. A few more deaths popped up in the weeks that followed. A couple of parents who disowned their 14-year-old daughter for being gay were found victim of 2 crudely performed lobotomies. A relatively inconspicuous man was gutted down by the creek. Authorities found an array of missing neighbourhood pets in his basement, all tortured and dismembered. Our neighbourhood seemed to sparkle just a little brighter with each death. There was, however, one problem we did not account for. You see, our little neighbourhood was only a few thousand people. How many child-molesting, animal-torturing, prejudiced scumbags can live in such a small area? It was bound to happen sooner or later, but in our case, it was sooner. The judge simply ran out of people to hunt. A few weeks went by without any incident. Most people believed that the judge had retired from his short-lived career, having cleaned the neighbourhood and kept the streets safe. But on May 30th, at around 5 p.m, a young child named Barbara Tibb was found on Lakeview Road, severely beaten with her lips sewn shut. She was about 9 years old. The neighbourhood was in an uproar of shock and bewilderment. Could this be the work of the judge? If so, why would the judge hurt a child? The answer became apparent with a little prodding of Barbara's schoolmates. Barbara was a notorious bully, one whose actions were often ignored by the teachers and playground monitors. She'd been beaten just as she had beaten weaker girls. Her lips had been sealed so she couldn't hurl her hateful insults ever again. At this point it was too late to stop it, and it became increasingly worse. Barbara's parents were the next to go, beaten to death for failing to discipline their own child. The teachers who stood by idly as she bullied the other children were tied up and thrown into a river to drown. Their struggles ignored by the rest of the world. A few days later, Jenna Tansen, who had once caused a fender bender by texting and driving, was run down with a car. She was 19. The police were frantically looking for this man. The rest of us were slowly giving in to panic. We had encouraged the judge at first, but now we had to wonder, by what standards was he now judging us? Things have gotten much worse in the last week. A woman caught littering has disappeared. I wonder if she'll ever turn up. The kid next door, who occasionally smokes a little weed, had so much heroin forcibly injected into his system that he OD'd. As for me, I've stopped going outdoors. I follow the news updates, but I keep my windows nailed shut and a gun beside my bed at all times. My neighbours are slowly disappearing. And now, I have to ask myself, have I done anything wrong?